Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of the Research Notes with Dr. Prim. Today's interviewee is Tanatsiwa Dambuza, the co-founder of Zimbabwe Institute of African Integration, who holds a bachelor's in political science and an MSc in international trade and diplomacy. He is a regional integration analyst and advocate who specializes in regional economic communities and the African Continental Free Trade Area, the AFCFTA. Tanatsiwa, welcome. How are you today?
Oh, hey, Prim. I'm really good. I'm really good. I can't complain. It is really a great day, and it is an honor to be hosted by Research Notes today. Thank you.
Awesome. It's also an honor to have you today. So thank you to you as well. So as we start every interview, I ask participants to speak to us about their field of study and how they got to where they are today academically. So please kindly share with us.
Okay. Thank you so much, Prim. So Tanatsiwa is a recent master graduate with international trade and diplomacy at the University of Zimbabwe. So I'm one of the pioneer students who were the first alumni to this program um, under the Department of uh, they have changed. I say, okay, I can just say political sciences and administrative studies because they have changed. I've forgotten the name. And also, I also did political science between 2017 and 2020, and then from 2020 to 2022, that is when I did my master degree in international trade and diplomacy. So basically, I was inspired when I did political economy, which was taught by Dr. Mataruse during my undergrad, where I learned about the African Continental Free Trade Area, and I realized that it was something that was not really looked into a lot um, by by my former lecturers and so forth. And I developed interest and started to research about it. So when they introduced the Education 5.0 around 2020, that is when they changed the curriculums and introduced these new programs. And then when I saw Master International Trade and Diplomacy, because initially I wanted to do international relations, I said, oh, this is it. This is what I want to do because I want to do my thesis focusing um, on the African Continental Free Trade area so that I can aid to the knowledge as well as also get to understand more and research deeper about it and how it affects women involved in informal cross-border trade. And also how is this agreement going to alleviate poverty among these important demographic dividend. So basically, that is how I started my master's. This was just like I learned it in the undergrad, and then the new program came in, and I said, yes, I think I can do it. And it also during my master's, I realized that we're not doing practical stuff. Such as these lectures that are done by professionals, by people from the ministry, and so forth. So that is when I said, no, I think I have to come up with an organization that will also help young students to get to understand how international trade really works practically through inviting informal cross-border traders, the ministers, um, the parastatals such as civil trade, so to teach them, to raise awareness on how Zimbabwe participates and how is it benefiting or facing challenges in international trade. So that is really my background in relation to this field. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your contributions thus far. And I like that you highlighted a lot of relevant key points because when we go into academic institutions, we think we're going to get everything from there. But throughout the learning processes, you were able to identify gaps and what else you wish you had gotten. And now you're doing it for younger people. And I think you're also doing it for multiple stakeholders who would otherwise not have interacted with students or interacted with each other. So well done also on your MSc graduation, as well as, of course, founding the Zimbabwe Institute of African Integration. So my next question is bulky, but I'm sure you've had these stats so many times where they say that trade runs economies at all levels and it is a crucial component of international relations. But sadly, Africa's share in international trade has been stuck at around 2%, and there are low levels of intra-continental trade. Why is Africa struggling, and what strategies do you believe can enhance the continent's trade competitiveness?
Thank you for that question. Trade in Africa, especially intra-African trade. Firstly, I just want to highlight that the statistics are distorted because they use the official statistics, which are not true.
Interesting.
They do not tell us the real information about what the informal cross-border traders are contributing and how they are contributing to inter-African trade. Do you know that over 40% of inter-African trade is done informally, and it is done by women and youth who face tariff and non-tariff barriers, so that to the extent that they don't use the formal channels. So that is one of the major problems that we have. But let me get into the problems that we are facing that actually also cause poor intra-African trade, or poor even trade of Africa, between Africans and other countries, be it outside Africa. Firstly, we do not have the proper infrastructure to facilitate trade, because when we are talking about trade, we are talking about movement. We're talking about movement of goods through road, through air, or through the sea.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at in Africa, you realize that we have poor road system networks, or poor road networks. We do not have properly made roads that can actually allow freedom of movement, or free movement of goods and services. If we talk of the roads, you are talking about these potholes and everything. You realize that that infrastructure causes problems, because it also increases transport costs and everything, to the extent that if you go to Africa, or if you look into the statistics, you realize that goods that comes from China, they are even cheaper than goods that comes from Zimbabwe to Zambia, because we have the poor infrastructure. And then secondly, you realize that in Africa, there is no freedom of movement. Recently, you realize that China and Kenya have signed an agreement of a visa-free agreement. But if you go to Africa, you realize that, of course, Kenya promised that it's going to open for every country in Africa, but it hasn't opened yet. It is going to start on the 1st of January 2024. So what I'm trying to say is we are more open to other countries, not African countries, but to other countries outside Africa, to the extent that our own neighboring countries face a lot of problems when it comes to freedom of movement, because the borders are closed for us, but opened for people who are coming from Europe, or from Asia, and so forth. So I think that is another problem that we are also facing. We are also facing trade barriers, be it tariffs or non-tariff barriers, and also trade restrictions between and amongst our own trading partners, especially Africa. For example, the average tariff on exports to the European Union is not about 10%. And then if you go to is it Asia, you realize that the average tariff is about 2.5%, not, or I can say maybe not more than 5%. In Latin America, it's not more than 5% as well. But here in Africa, you realize that it is over 30%. which is just an average between an African country and another African country. And moreover, Africa is has to comply with complex and stringent standards, regulations, and certification that limit our access to foreign markets. So that is another problem that we are facing, not only at regional level, but at international level or at intracontinental trade level. And then there is also lack of diversity. Our exports as Africa are mainly concentrated in primary commodities, for example, oil, minerals, and agricultural products, which are subject to price increases or to price volatility, because sometimes they increase, sometimes they are low, and so forth. And also have like low value addition. So those are some of the problems that we are facing. So we do not have like diverse products, or we do not have value-added products in Africa. We trade in raw materials. So mainly our prices or our products, they are not stable. So that is another reason why we do not contribute much to the international trade statistics. And then I think also our markets as Africa, they are fragmented. Like we have 8 regional economic communities in Africa. Other countries are members of more than 2 or more than 1 regional organization or regional economic community. For example, DRC is a member of SADC. It is a member of East African community. If you go to Tanzania, it is a member of EAC, it is a member of COMESA, it is a member of SADC, and so forth. So this creates high cost of doing business and reduces the potential for economic for economies of scale and regional integration. So that is another problem that we are actually facing. But of course, there are solutions to this problem. For example, we need to invest in infrastructure. We need to improve our physical and digital infrastructure to reduce the cost and time of trade and enhance connectivity to the rest of the world, because it looks like we are isolated because of lack of infrastructure. We also need to reduce the trade barriers, be it tariff and non-tariff barriers, and that is what the African Continental Free Trade Area is seeking to do. We also need to harmonize the regional economic communities, and the AFCFTA has promised that it is going to harmonize all the 8 regs so that they become one. And if a reg is done better, it is going to adopt what it has already adopted, but making sure that it is not causing a fragmented market. We also need to diversify, of course, our exports in order to promote development in Africa by improving our manufacturing services and digital sectors, hence increasing value addition and competitive of our exports as Africa. We also need to foster innovation, entrepreneurship, and skills development to create new products and services that can meet the demands of the global market. So that is what we need to do in order to make sure that Africa can also catch up with other regions. Because like what I mentioned earlier, other regions have very low tariffs as compared to Africa. That will need to be done, to be improved. They also have very low non-tariff barriers. For example, issues to do with corruption, issues to do with border delays, bureaucratic pathologies, and also the non-technical measures and so forth. So that is what we need to improve on, so that we also contribute to a larger scale when it comes to global trade and the international trade, rather. So yeah, thank you so much. I think that is basically my contribution.
Thank you so much for the wholesome contribution. And I like that you also tackled the reality that you always get these statistics thrown at us, let's say from the World Bank, the bleak image of our 2% paltry contribution. And also, it also begs us to think about what do we need to think about when we speak about trade in Africa. And you emphasized the relevance of cross-border trade, which contributes a lot. And I think because women and youth are more likely to be out of formal employment or formal means of trade, we find them there a lot. So we really need to refocus on those areas. And I like that you ended with relevant contributions. You spoke about innovations, entrepreneurial skills, and also dealing with the multiple barriers that have been imposed that can actually be done away with for us to be able to play as a player in the global market and also in terms of within the continent. I do hope that we have people that have the political will, because some of the challenges we face that lead to the high cost of doing business, like what you said, infrastructure, and just making sure that the systems at borders, for example, are friendly to people to do trade will be very helpful. So I look forward also to an Africa where there's more states that are open to the movement of people and also that facilitate faster and more efficient movement of goods as well. So my next question relates to how I got to know about you. You are a strong promoter, in my view, of the AFCFTA agenda. What aspects of this agreement do you find most promising, and what drives your involvement in AFCFTA initiatives?
Okay, the African Continental Free Trade Area itself is, I think it is clear on what it wants to achieve and how it is going to do that.
Yes.
Firstly, if you look in the one of the objectives is to increase or to create a single African market. That is the major goal, so that we realize the goal of the Agenda 2063 of the Africa we want, which is integrated, peaceful as well as prosperous. So that is the major goal of the African Continental Free Trade Area. So one of the ways that it is going to do so is actually to remove, like what we was talking about, the barriers, the trade barriers, be it tariff and non-tariff barriers. That is one of the major things that it is going to remove in Africa. And if you look at in Africa, like what I mentioned earlier, those are the major problems that we are facing. And it is going to do that by creating a market which is interconnected, so that we improve or we get to achieve the goals of the Agenda 2063. So some of the things or of the promises that the AFCFTA, once it removes the tariff and the non-tariff barriers that we are facing as Africa, we are going to realize economic growth.
Yes.
It is said that the AFCFTA, the researches that have been done before, yes, the potential to increase the continent's gross development product by 450 billion by 2035.
Yes.
This was done in 2020, but we haven't seen the full implementation of the AFCFTA yet. So I'm afraid these statistics are going to change as time goes, because
Yes.
the implementation hasn't been done yet, or it hasn't been fully implemented, and we are already in the fourth or fifth year since the coming in of the agreement. But of course, these promises would translate, if it come into effect, would translate into higher income, employment, and living standards for millions of us as Africans.
Yes.
It will also stimulate, of course, investment, innovation, and industrialization, which are the key drivers of economic development. One major problem that we have in Africa is we are not really industrialized. And the AFCFTA once it opens the market, I believe that it is going to give countries an opportunity to industrialize because there will be really competition and no one wants to be left behind. So if it comes to effect, I believe that it is going to solve this problem that we are facing. But as we are also looking at these positive things, we also have to look at the bleak side of it. For example, if we open markets, if we create the special economic zones and everything, we must also look at how the AFCFTA may also impact the labor practice of the people. For example, here in Zimbabwe, we have heard that the Chinese are exploiting the people. People are facing harder times. They have bad or harsh working conditions because we have opened some of the special economic zones, or we have given them these benefits that allows them to do what they want and not to follow the labor practices that are given maybe by the International Labor Organization or by the national labor laws that we have. So we also have to look into that. And then, of course, one of the major problems that we have talked about is that Africa is disintegrated. It's disintegrated. It is disconnected because we have too many regional economic communities. But the AFCFTA is going to create this single market of over 1 billion people, which will inevitably enhance the bargaining power and influence of Africa at the global level.
Yes.
The AFCFTA, of course, will foster cooperation between African countries. It will also contribute to the realization of our goal as Africa, which is an integrated, prosperous, and peaceful Africa, as entrenched in the AU Agenda 2063, the Africa we want. I also think that the AFCFTA will also benefit the vulnerable communities. If we have seen that it is the only agreement with a protocol on women and youth in trade since the WTO was formed, it can give you better hope that this is an all-inclusive agreement, which is going to improve social inclusion of the most vulnerable communities, groups, especially the women, the youth, and the SMEs, because women and youth are the major players in the small to medium enterprises, because it provides us with more opportunities, such as access to market, resources, and services. So that is what I believe in, to say that this agreement is not only meant for the big business, but it is also meant for us smaller businesses who want also to export and import products from other African countries, but you are facing the barriers that I have mentioned earlier. Of course, the AFCFTA, I think it is also another major reason why we are going to also have the implementation of the protocol on freedom of movement of people, or the ratification of countries, because I think it is a major driver of that, because countries are going to eventually realize that you can't trade freely without freedom of movement. So if they are serious and if they have a political will to achieve that, I think they are also going to make sure that they ratify the protocol on the freedom of movement, so that we have free visa access, so that we can easily go from one country to another as persons, because we are the ones who moves with the goods and services from one country to another. So there's no free trade without free movement. So I think it is also a major driver that is going to push this protocol to ratification in the near future. And then I also believe that the African Continental Free Trade Area, as it promises, it is going to make sure that countries in Africa have a single and united mentality when it comes to trading, because we have had trade diversion, trade with other continents, trade with other countries that are outside Africa. Yet we can easily trade among us ourselves and make a better living and make a better and improve our own economies as Africans. So I think it is going to make sure that countries realize that there is a need for us to cooperate. Because if we look at in Europe, they just did that. And now it is one of the biggest economies in the world with their Schengen visa. And they haven't faced any problems that most of the African countries were afraid of. For example, terrorism and so forth. Because some of the countries, they just say, no, we don't want to open our markets because there will be these problems. There will be terrorism, human trafficking, and so forth. But if you look in Europe, where they did it, what we are seeing is economic boom, not increase in terrorism, not increase in human trafficking, but rather there is really improvement. And also, lastly, I think the AFCFTA is also going to improve in terms of environmental sustainability. Because I have said they are already talking about environmental sustainability under the African Continental Free Trade Area and how it is going to improve that. And I believe that as time goes by, they are going to come up with a protocol, or at least some of the articles under the agreements that are already there that talks on environmental sustainability and how we can use trade to improve the environmental conditions rather than to worsen them. So yeah, those are some of the things that I think the AFCFTA is going to improve. But of course, there are a lot, and some of them we are going to realize them as time goes by, as it starts to be implemented.
Thank you so much. This is Research Notes. I hope people have been taking their notes. The good thing about this is they can always re-access the audio or visual format on YouTube. So I really like the points you touched on, and I don't want to revisit, but you really emphasize the importance of what we need to look into when you speak about international trade and diplomacy. And as it is, it seems very promising. And I hope that even though I won't be there, or I might reach 2063, that Agenda 2063 will be realized. I do understand on a personal level that there are rising levels of political insecurity on the continent. Some of them are even of an intrastate nature. So I think that can undermine, any government's efforts to try and curb political troubles whilst trying to also promote industrialization and to see to it that people observe environmental sustainability, that they're involved in meaningful enterprise as well as getting assistance. So I really hope that some of those barriers can be done away with, in addition to some of the very technical ones we mentioned under the tariffs and the non-tariff barriers that are linked to trade in the ways that it happens directly. So thank you so much once again. And I hope that some of our listeners will feel inspired by you, that they can also actually think about how they can partake in the AFCFTA agenda. Because what I do think is, apart from the politicians and some of the stakeholders who are part of different initiatives, we actually need more buy-in and people thinking about how can I participate and how can they better contribute to Africa's prosperity. So we've come to a stage in the interview where I relieve you of being the interviewee to interviewing me. So I'm ready to take the heat, if any. Would you like to ask me something?
Not much. Thank you so much for having me on your show and for giving me the chance to share my views and insights on the self-GI. I appreciate your interest and support for the AFCFT agenda. But of course, you've done this, you are doing this research note and bringing a lot of people talking about different aspects. So I just want to know, you as a researcher
Mm-hmm.
and as a person who is involved in media, how do you perceive the role and impact of the media in promoting and raising awareness about the AFCFTA? Because you've used the media for different things. Do you think that the media has a role to play in the implementation and the success, as well as the raising awareness of the AFCFTA?
Thank you so much for that. So, as a researcher, I tend to get frustrated by the reality that, I mean, personally, I've written papers on the African Union, to some extent, even on the AFCFTA. And I know the reality that very few people read academic articles, foremost because they have to include all these theories and rough concepts that certain reviewers have to acknowledge them and say this can be published. So I have always hoped that I can have other ways in which I can communicate research. And although I haven't reviewed all my articles online, I do think that the use of emerging technologies is helpful. For example, your YouTube or your Spotify, maybe TikTok to Instagram to some extent, although I don't know how to use those, and yet they are very catchy. I think there are very good areas in which you can catch up onto particular audiences. However, I think the downfall is that those areas are very compressed, which is why I think I opted for podcast, right? Because I can't say everything in a 30-second or 1 minute or like 5 minute video. So there is room for people to access key points and hopefully then refer to the bigger picture. So hopefully after my conversation with you, someone will look for the AFCFTA agreement, right? That someone will look up Agenda 2063, but it will also help them because you've prompted them to think about this by giving your viewpoints. And I think that when we speak broadly, we need to be careful about what we mean by media because some people still listen a lot to the radio in many areas, I think mostly in rural context in Africa. So one would ask me, will research notes reach certain parts and get people hearing it? Because research notes is in English, how can it be translatable and all of that? So really, my contribution is a mere drop in the ocean. And I hope that there can be more people doing this work differently in different languages using different forms of media. I do think media is important and it has a huge impact. I've gotten to know about events and ways in which I can contribute to different agenda. For example, through LinkedIn, which I think, though professional, works very much as a form of social media. So if you're into business, if you're a researcher or a media expert, those are also areas where you get catchy insights that are media based. So really, it is very helpful. And I think in as much as we're disgruntled about living in the age of artificial intelligence, having the media still gives that human touch. And I think that people are still entertaining the idea of listening to someone or watching some people. So really, it plays a relevant role. I don't know if that answers your question.
Indeed, indeed. Actually, I'm inspired by the fact that you're already using media to make impact. And one thing that I know is it doesn't mean that we have to reach everyone, but those few people that get to know about the AFCFTA through the contribution that you're doing, all those people who have to get to access information that they could not have accessed if we haven't posted about it. I think those are the most important people. So it's not like you have to reach everyone. Of course, we need to consider the people whom you can reach. I think if you realize that this is my mission, I need to spread the word about this through this media platform, then that is your mission. There are other people who are also supposed to carry on from where you are, from where what you are doing to the next level. So I think it is always good to just appreciate how the media has done or contributed to the African continental free trade area and are raising awareness. Because personally, I have used the media to teach people, to train people on what the AFCFTA is all about. And I've also received positive feedback. You actually contacted me using the media because that is where I am and that is how I am contributing to the African continental free trade area. There are other people who are there in the rural areas, or if they are not there, it is something that the media can actually do to say, no, the duty bearers consider the people in the rural areas because they are not reached by the information that you are doing. So that the media doesn't just wake us raising awareness to the rights holders, but also to the duty bearers so that they can take action. And I've also liked the point that you said that there is need for translation of these things. I've seen some of the young Zimbabwean lady. She has come up with this LinkedIn page that translates the AFCFTA in different languages, and it's a team of I think 5 or so ladies speaking different languages, and they are already doing that. Of course, maybe they just lack funding and everything, but at least with what they have, they are doing something. The same as me. We started with what we had, and sometimes we also get funding to just train people and so forth. But as for us, we are not going to be stopped because we do not have money or anything. We are going to use what we have at our own exposure as a young people so that we enhance or raise awareness on the African continental free trade area. So I really think that the media really works a lot when it comes to awareness raising and also to the success of the African continental free trade area. But we also need to be taught what it is about because there are a lot of media personnel who do not know the AFCFTA. But if they get to know about it, I can tell you, it can make noise on radio, it can make noise on TV, it can make noise in the newspaper, and so forth, and reach everyone. But if we are excluded, then we can't tell people what we don't know.
I think you've already sort of like slid into the last question, which is, do you have any last words for our viewers and listeners?
Thank you so much, Prim. I really do have last words, and I would like to say that the AFCFTA is not only a trade agreement, but it is a vision and a mission for Africa. Frantz Fanon said that each generation in its relative opacity has a mission of fulfill it or betray it. The AFCFTA is our mission, is our vision. So it is on us whether to fulfill it or to betray it. I believe that it is a collective effort and a shared responsibility for us all Africans, from the public and private sectors to the civil society and the media, to make the African continental free trade area a reality and a success. Hence, I urge all of us as Africans to get involved and engaged in the process so that we learn more about its benefits and opportunities. You know, we need to support its implementation and also to monitor it so that it becomes a success. It is really the catalyst for Africa's development and prosperity. One of my friends, David Takwara, who is a documentary person, he said that this is the last hope for Africa. We have tried a lot of things and failed. And if we fail this one, Africa may not have any hope in terms of development. But one thing that I want to remind us as a people, the AFCFTA, honestly, is not a magic wand that will solve all of our problems overnight.
Mm.
It is a journey. It is a marathon. It is a means to an end, but not the destination. We really need to be courageous and resilient, because there are many obstacles that we are going to face, the challenges, the risks, and everything. But we need to make sure that we unite and as African, so that we reach the goals that were set even by our forefathers, the Kwame Nkrumahs, the Julius Nyerere, the Thomas Sangaras. And I think that if we continue in this journey, like what I said, a marathon, we are going to reap a lot of rewards and benefits, as promised with these researchers and everything. It is there, but we need to have confidence and also to be patient, because it is not going to happen in one day. And also, we need also to make sure that we realize that there are also some of the inequalities that are going to come with the AFCFTA that needs to be that we need to be aware of, and also to be ready to face them and to find ways to resolve them. I talked about poor labor practices.
Yes.
Other communities, for example, already have the rural and the urban bifurcation already. There are people who do not have access to the digital technologies and so forth. And these people are already disadvantaged. And if the AFCFTA comes and is fully implemented, they may not also have access to the information that helps them to understand and also to benefit from it. Hence, creating other inequalities that are not there because it is not there at the moment or it is not fully implemented. So we also need to consider that. So we must embark on this journey together with passion and determination, and also with optimism. Let's employ the Afro-optimism paradigm. Because if we just look at the negatives, the AFCFTA may not come into play, but we must also look at the positive. So thank you so much for the opportunity. And I believe that this is one of the ways that we are going to increase awareness to let people get to understand the opportunities, the benefits of the AFCFTA. And if we continue doing this thing, it will lead to another person. And another person will give another person that audio until it reaches a wider audience. So thank you so much for the opportunity that you've given me to talk about something that I'm really passionate about.
Awesome. I hope that they've heard and that they're going to activate. You put much emphasis on the fact that this is for us to fulfill. We can't be betraying our mandate. It's all about collective effort, shared responsibility, being passion driven, stay determined. And I think more importantly is the Afro optimism and patience, because those are required, as well as being cognizant of any emerging challenges, monitoring and evaluating, and making sure that as we go on this journey, we get rid of any impurities. So I take that away from, just to sum up what you said. And I hope that this has inspired many. And I don't think this will be the last time we'll be talking on research notes, because I think this will be a continued journey. This is just season 1. So thank you so much, Tanatsiwa, for joining us today on the Research Notes podcast series. To our listeners, I'm Dr. Primrose ZJ Bima. I'm on a mission to demystify the world of research by engaging in conversations with a diverse set of intellectuals, academics, industry professionals, as well as creators. It's goodbye for now.